And welcome to the January 10th, 2022 business meeting of the Milford Board of Education. If everyone can please rise for the pledge. Good evening, everyone. I have some housekeeping items just to read off before we get underway. In compliance with Governor Lamont's executive order and the Commissioner of Public Health's rules for school buildings, attendees are required to wear well-fitted masks that fit completely over their nose and mouth while inside the school building, regardless of their vaccination status. This includes during public comment. Spare masks are available for anyone who would like one. Please exercise social distancing while inside the school building. Auditorium seating is set up to provide a 6-foot distance between attendees who are not immediate household members. Restrooms and hand sanitizer will be available for meeting attendees. To reach the microphone for public comment, which is on this side of the auditorium, that's your left, please walk behind. If you're on the far right side, please walk behind the PA control desk in the back of the auditorium to reach the public comment microphone. We thank you in advance for your cooperation in promoting a safe and healthy environment for this meeting. I'd also like to thank the Jonathan Law staff, our tech folks, and administration for working so hard to provide us with a meeting space. I'll ask Ms. Griffin now for a roll call. And just for the record, we have 2 board members that are Zooming in, Ms. Hennessy and Ms. Wolf-Boynton. So roll call for attendance, Ms. Griffin.
Adam DeYoung, Megan Doyle, Andrew Fowler.
Here.
Rita Hennessy.
She's here.
By Zoom.
Rita, can you turn on your microphone? We couldn't hear you.
Emily McDonough Souza.
Here.
Thank you.
Emily McDonough Souza.
Here.
Holly Mulrenan.
Here.
Una Petrosky.
Here.
Betsy Ratner.
Here.
Cindy Wolf-Boynton.
Cindy, can you speak up?
Here.
There you go. Thank you.
And Susan Glennon.
I'm here. Thank you.
All members present.
Thank you. All members present. We have student reports this evening. In attendance, we have Foreign David, right? So if you'd like to come to the podium and give your report, and then Ms. Vedigan has the report for Jonathan Law.
Hello, board members. I'm David Gaetano, and I'm here tonight to represent Foreign High School. Arzu unfortunately could not make it with us here tonight, as she's currently competing in the James Barber Invitational Track Meet. But nonetheless, we've worked together to compile the most recent happenings from our school environment that we are excited to speak with you about. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak in front of you all tonight. I will first discuss recent sport updates in our school. As winter break had concluded, many of our winter sports teams are continuing to work hard as they approach the latter end of the season. Recently, freshman Faith Doyle was named our Athlete of the Week for her outstanding performance in basketball. She scored 55 points, collected 14 rebounds, and had 13 steals in her first 3 career varsity starts. Also in exciting news, our wrestling team won the championship of the CJ McCormack tournament over the past weekend for the first time in history. Elliot Poffenberger was an individual champion. Keith and Kyle Pokanowski, Antonio Madero, Craig Major, and Anthony Giordano all took home second place. In terms of academics, in the starting of the new year, several new students have been admitted to the Mu Alpha Theta Math Honor Society. Ty Duggan, Grace Foley, Gerald Gutierrez, Kevin Chen, Johan Chen, and Maria Corman. One exciting experience that our students have finally been able to engage in, as we are able to learn in person this year, has been science labs. Students in AP Chemistry conducted redox titrations, and students in Chemistry in the Earth Systems looked at the combustion reaction of magnesium using a small flame. Computer science students were luckily able to attend an in-class field trip where 4 guest speakers spoke to various careers in computer science. Speakers included many influencers from different aspects of the field, and this is the start of some work to do more industry connections for capstone members and internship advisors for computer science in Milford. We've also had a busy season for clubs since we last met. Before break, our natural helpers collected hats, gloves, toys, and other necessities for a family in need over the holidays. Our Friends Forever Club also hosted its annual holiday party before break, where students were able to do crafts, relax before break. In other news, our Key Club continued to raise money for the Salvation Army in its bell ringing at Stop and Shop and Boz Calls every weekend. And we are so proud of all of our students' dedication to helping out their community in this time of the year. To boost morale over the holidays, our Foreign National Honor Society ran a Follow Lala Days event the day before break, where students could order holiday grams for their friends, teachers, and peers. And this was a massive success, and it made our school environment that much more inviting before break. Since we returned to school, our student body has been doing a great job reacclimating to the school and preparing for midterms next week. In fact, many of our students are even peer tutoring for midterms during our new ASAP after-school help program in the coming days. Once again, I would like to thank you all for allowing us to share a little bit of our students and what they're doing in the community. We really appreciate this time to speak on our school's behalf, and we're looking forward to our thank you.
Thank you very much, David. We'll see you next week. Next month, I'm sorry, not next week. Ms. Fettigan, you have Jonathan Law's report to read to us?
I do. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, board members. It's my honor to share this report this evening on behalf of Aiden King and Jackson Warders, who are also attending the track meet this evening. So let's get going with some law-amazing news. They've provided this script for me, and I will share it with you. This past month, Jonathan Law High School students donated food during the holiday food drive. They collected enough to provide meals for 8 families in the Jonathan Law community. In academics, the Teaching and Learning Commons has started a stress release program for our students to help them with their upcoming midterm exams. We have quiet study areas that will be available for many students, as well as stress relieving activities. Athletics and law sports action, winter sports are off and running. The students would like to thank their student athletes and coaches for following safety guidelines. Boys and girls basketball are both off to good starts, each winning their most recent games. Our boys and girls indoor track teams have continued their historical success, with many students already qualifying for SCC and state meets. The boys and girls hockey are looking optimistic as they try to qualify for their respective state tournaments. Our gymnastics team has won their first meet of the season, and they look forward to competing against Foreign in the next meet. The wrestling team is having an excellent start to their season at both the varsity and junior varsity levels, including a win in their last meet over New Haven. From the School Counseling and College and Career Department, the College and Career Center has connected with over 50% of our grade 9 students to ensure that their Khan Academy and College Board accounts are linked and connected and functioning for them. By doing this, this helps our students access their PSAT scores and engage in individualized practice for future testing. All freshman students should be set with this process within the next couple of weeks. Our college acceptances continue, and approximately 50 seniors have reported at least one or more acceptance through Naviance. And 3 students have even officially committed to their choice schools, which include early decision at Florida Southern College for lacrosse, early decision at American University, and San Jose State University. And that is it for this evening for Law Amazing News.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Was that it? That was it, right?
That's
Thank you. All right, do we have any members of the public who would like to make public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none, I'll dispense with the public comment statement, and we'll move on to the chair's report. Just a Happy New Year to everyone. It's our first meeting of 2022. We begin our budget work this evening with Dr. Kutaya's presentation of her proposal to us as a broad overview. A reminder for the board, our practice is to save specific questions for our budget workshops that'll occur later this week and next week, when we will take a deeper look at the proposal in collaboration with administration to determine what the board will ultimately put forward to the city. Workshops are scheduled for this Wednesday and Thursday and will be held virtually via Zoom and live streamed for the public on YouTube by MGAT. This decision was made by Mr. Fowler, Ms. Petrosky, and myself in consideration of the extra burden on custodial and tech staff for the setup and breakdown of 3 individual meetings this week. Since the school uses this space during the day, everything has to be broken down and put away. The workshop next Wednesday, the 19th, at which time I anticipate we will vote, will be held in person here at Jonathan Law. All the meetings will begin at 7 p.m., and each of the workshop agendas will include a time for public comment. The first 2 are at the end of the meeting after discussion, and the last will have public comment before we vote. Public comment at these workshops will be limited to budget items. A reminder that members of the public can always email comments to the board as well. I did ask you all to submit questions in advance so administration has time to formulate responses. A reminder that if additional questions emerge after the presentation tonight, please send them to me in writing no later than tomorrow morning. And I look forward to a robust conversation between us and administration during our workshops. And I do anticipate that at that time, as we're going through the discussion, additional questions might come up. Feel free to ask them that night. And if administration can answer, they will. Otherwise, they'll get added to the list. Once we wrap up our budget work, the document goes to print and must be in the mayor's hands by the end of the month. The process then moves on to a public hearing before the Board of Finance, after which administration and I present our funding request to them. And I don't have those dates yet. And then the process moves on with the same sequence of events for the Board of Aldermen. Lastly, I want to take the opportunity to publicly acknowledge the hard work of our dedicated staff over the past months. It's been a very trying few weeks, especially our principals, who have worked very hard over the break and New Year's weekend to ensure that schools could open last Monday, and we are truly appreciative of that. I expect board members might chime in during board comment time, but please know, we see and appreciate all that Milford Public Schools personnel are doing for our young people. Do I have any liaison reports from board members this evening? Ms. Doyle?
Hi, thank you. I have a report from the last Alderman meeting. At the last meeting of the Alderman, Mayor Blake's office submitted his capital improvement plan for the next 5 years from 2021 to 2026. Calls for approximately $80 million in improvements to the school system. Many of the costs are related to the aging buildings, such as the replacement of the cost of the roof at foreign general improvements like boilers and ventilators and asbestos abatement. The capital improvement plan does include the installation of air conditioning at all schools. The cost is to be covered under a combination of general obligation bonds and grants. The board carried the motion with a vote of 11-1. Alderman Vitale commented he could not vote for the $70 million that's allocated to renovation and maintenance. He stated he has requested for several years a long-range plan from the Board of Education, and without one, he could not support the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. Other liaison reports? Ms. Ratner?
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. This is from the Milford Prevention Council. We had the second annual Frosty Fashion. It was a drive-by and a walk-by fundraiser. Extremely successful. Families donated their time and energy to painting and designing their very own creative snow people. You probably saw them on the green. The proceeds benefited Milford Prevention Council and Substance Abuse and Prevention and Mental Health Awareness. And we were glad that the second annual was helping to grow it in such a way that we decided to give prizes as well.
Thank you, Ms. Ratner. Any other liaison reports this evening? All right, I see none. No further. So we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Just want to make sure everyone can hear me. Now that's an entrance, right? We good? Great. Thank you, Ms. Glennon. Thank you, members of the Board of Education. I'd like to kick off the superintendent's report this evening with the superintendent's proposed budget for the 22-23 school year. And if I may, I'd like to do that standing on my feet. Since it's such a big proposal, I'd really like to spend some time facing you this evening to share with you a little bit of what we hope and dream for our young people and staff members in the coming school year. As Ms. Glennon already outlined the process, I'm going to take it backward a little bit, actually. Our budget development process started way back in September, October of this school year. We approach our budget through a zero-based budgeting process where we go to schools, 14 of our school sites, and ask teachers and principals, administrators, central office administrators, department heads, what is it that we need to take the next steps to continue to help our school district grow and progress us forward to ensure that our students, our young people, capture the entire vision of the learner and are prepared for entering into their next steps after graduation. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the challenges we faced building this budget. I'm also going to walk you through what we hope to accomplish as we continue moving forward for our young people. I am excited to engage in this dialogue after this evening throughout the workshops. Thankful for the questions you've already posed to us, and look forward to answering more questions so we can bring greater clarity to this proposed budget that is before you. So let's get started. This slide should look very familiar to you. It has been in the proposed budget for the last 3 years. And in fact, we use these visuals as a symbol to what we refer to as a three-legged stool. Everything we do in Milford Public Schools anchors back to these 3 key pieces that guide our work all throughout the processes. 1, the vision of the learner. What we want for every young person, whether they're age 3, 13, or 22. We vision this for all of our young people. We also ground our work in the Search Institute's developmental relationships framework. And thirdly, we are guided by our very own homegrown model for high quality instruction. It is those 3 key pieces that are always on the table, always guiding our dialogue and our plans and our goals. Nope, maybe I can't move. You want to stay still? Okay. It is those 3 pieces that this budget is built on. Of course, we always start with the board's mission and vision, crafted and developed long ago. But more recently, let me remind our public and yourselves of the commitments and the goals that were adopted in May of 21. I will not read these. They were a process that we engaged in together. And these 9 commitments and these 4 goals are markers for us to achieve and work toward over the next few years. I propose that this budget, along with our commitments and goals, will help us enact the vision of the learner for all of our young people. If you'll remember, in October of 21, this board discussed and developed and approved these budget priorities. Again, I won't read the budget priorities to you, but in highlighting, we believe in a core instructional program. We believe in the wellness and development of young people. We believe in ongoing development of our adults. We're committed to effective class sizes. We believe in 21st century learning spaces, and we believe in the investment in extracurricular activities and athletics for our young people. We also know that walking into this budget year, and we'll talk much more specifically about these in a few slides, we were going to bump up against some natural challenges financially. I won't go into the specifics, but back in October, we made some predictions in the area of rising costs, in areas such as transportation and utilities, ongoing growth of adults in the system, the continued impact of a pandemic virus, which has not gone away yet. You, as a board, reviewed these assumptions and approved them in October. We took these key assumptions into consideration as we built the budget. We're getting some feedback, Blessing. You want me to use a different microphone? going? Okay. Can you hear me? Yep. So before we move on to talk about our accomplishments and progress made, I sort of want to give an analogy that I've been thinking about as we've been making progress through the school system. And it's often that in our meetings of late and for the last 22, 23 months, that you would imagine an agenda is likely full of pandemic-related items. There are a lot of business and operations happening related to how to respond to the pandemic in our schools. And if we're not careful, we'll make the assumption that we're not really tending to the business of teaching and learning much. And I'm glad that we have the agenda item that's entitled Instructional Highlight, because that gives us an opportunity to share with the board and the public that we are committed still to the work of teaching and learning. And as I'm thinking about that, I was thinking about riding a bicycle. Everyone in the room has ridden a bicycle. I am a current recreational cyclist. I don't do it competitively or professionally. I just like to take the bike out when spring and summer and fall are around. I'm not a winter biker. And I am the kind of cyclist that likes flat roads. I like a predicted path. I like to know where I'm starting and where I'm ending. Preferably here in Milford, along Fort Trumbull, down Silver Sands, all the way down to the Audubon is one of my favorite routes, nice and flat. It's when I go cycling with friends on their paths that I run into a little bit of trouble. And that's when there's a hill involved. Now, everyone has had this experience, right? You're kind of trucking along on your bicycle and life is good. And then there's a hill. And especially when you're with your peers, you're going up the hill and suddenly at a certain point you think to yourself, I'm not sure I'm going to make it. And if with your friends, you might even be saying, I'm not getting off this bike, I'm going to make it. I'm not getting off the bike, I'm going to make it. I'm not walking this bike up the hill, I'm going to make it. There is a phenomenon actually that occurs when you're going up a hill. Most people get up out of the saddle and stand up on the pedals to make it up the hill, right? You're exerting more energy that way. There's actually, scientifically, often occurs a loss of momentum from the moment you get out of the saddle and onto your feet. It has been shown that a cyclist that gets out of their saddle and gets up on their feet to work harder loses momentum. And there are two things that could help a cyclist not lose momentum when going up a difficult hill. Number one, cyclists are recommended to stay centered. A cyclist moving out of the saddle and onto their feet will either overexert themselves and now they wobble, or they are leaning too far back. And those two things will cause you to lose momentum. Recommendation one, stay centered on your bike while going up the hill. And the second recommendation may sound a little counterintuitive. It actually recommends, as you're moving out of the saddle onto your feet, to shift into a harder gear. And your chains don't skip. So imagine that, going up a hill. The last 23 months has felt like cycling up a hill. And two things, I believe, have kept us continuing up the hill and not getting off the bike and walking up the hill. And that's one, as we remain centered in Milford Public Schools. We have remained focused on the vision of the learner, our relationships, and what we know is good about teaching and learning, and that's HQI. And there has been, over the last 23 months, progress made because we have shifted into a harder gear to get up the hill. And that is when I want to commend the staff, incredible staff members of Milford Public Schools. Because in the following slides, the progress made is because we shifted into a harder gear and stayed centered on what we believe in. And you know, it's interesting that we use the word progress on this slide. Because it would be assumed that during a pandemic, not much progress would occur in classrooms, right? That would be a natural assumption. But if we're not progressing in our classrooms, you know what the opposite of that is, right? Two phenomena: stagnation and, even worse, regression. And that's not happening in Milford Public Schools. And I propose that the next few slides will show how we are progressing forward, albeit when you go up hills, you're not going as fast as when you're on a flat road, right? So we have changed our pace, and I will show you that in our curriculum work. We haven't stopped on the hill, we've just changed our pace. So let me show you the progress that we continue to make in the backdrop of a pandemic. So gratefully, we held only 3 graduation ceremonies this year, all in person. We graduated the class of 2021 at the Academy, at Law, and at Foreign, in outdoor ceremonies with guests. Of the 461 graduates that we celebrated in June, about a third graduated with these honors. I'm also grateful to say that 95% of our young people left with a specific plan post-graduation. Now these numbers, I would challenge us in the future to hope that they will move a little bit. That we aim for 100% of students having a plan leaving our schools, and encouraging, based on our career paths and our pre-certification opportunities in high school, the more we grow them, potentially we may have more and more students, young people, going straight into employment and even career education paths. So we're hoping to impact those numbers. Bottom line, 100% of our young people having an absolute definitive plan, and understanding, helping our young people understand that there are lots of choices leaving high school. Choices that they will be better, more and more prepared for because they were in Milford Public Schools. And finally, we continue to have students that excel and perform at the highest levels according to College Board advanced placement courses. Celebrating 167 students who were named AP Scholars for the class of 2021. So, this will be the last time I promise you that you see this picture. Because if you have a good memory, you have seen this stock photo of these great-looking kids having an awesome time in elementary science. But I made this board a promise 3 years ago that I was going to replace this picture one day with our very own elementary science lab photos. So drum roll, please. It's done. You supported and we implemented elementary science labs. Just like cycling up the hill, we didn't give up. We shifted into a harder gear. It took us longer. COVID put us back a year on this. But these are our very own elementary students in science labs in every one of our elementary schools. So big, big round of applause to our leaders in STEM and our science lab teachers and the people who supported rolling this out this year. I can't wait for the day that the board could see those live walking through our buildings and seeing our elementary science labs. Well, HQI Live, we should be saying season 3 happened, but we were able to pull off a season 2 over the summer. And I'll tell you, this is probably a message of a miracle. We really were not sure that we'd be able to get adults together with young people, watching high quality instruction occurring and learning so much from one another, and we did this summer. We were able to get about 50+ teachers join us in July. And this year, different in HQI Live is that we were moving too fast. We were able to have a new unit of study in the area of humanities, which is different. It has been STEM for us. And we were able to bring in some high schoolers as well as elementary young people. And so we got to see a different unit of study in a different age group. We hope to continue HQI Live Season 3 for this upcoming summer. We are just going to now naturally embed that in our culture, that HQI Live is just going to happen. One thing we were able to pull off before COVID reared its ugly head viciously this fall was we were able, it was a very hard hill to climb. We did a live lab site at one of our middle schools this year. Our goal eventually is to bring HQI Live Summer into HQI Live every day during the school year. And we were able to do that, but shortage of substitutes, the stamina of staff members, the planning that was involved, the contact tracing that consumed administrators, all that got in the way this fall, winter. So we hope to resume that, if possible, this spring, if not for next school year. This is something I'm very, very excited about, that this year we were able to pull off a pilot year in some of our preschools and some of our kindergarten classes to implement units of study that are being developed and piloted before we go across the entire school district in the area of intentional play and executive functioning. This has been a work that started a couple of years ago where we had a third-party consultant do a review of our preschool and kindergarten instructional practices, and grateful for the leader who is in the position of our early learning programs. Under Ms. Gaffney's leadership, the coordination between pre-K and K is really coming together throughout the school year. You will see in the proposed budget that we hope to expand this pilot. We also did some shifting in the area of how we use adults. And as I've already discussed with the board, we put in place school counselors this year in each one of our elementary schools, and an additional counselor at the middle school. Most certainly are filling a need across the district in the area of social and emotional learning, mental health support, and a need that we only see as growing more and more, and will be with us for a long time past COVID. Our commitment to the board when we shared this with you, we built it into the ESSER grant. We built all 11 positions into the grant along with a couple others, and we made a commitment to this board that we would move positions over incrementally over the next 3 years to avoid a huge funding cliff. So this proposed budget, the current budget has the implementation of the counselors. The proposed budget has the shift of a few of those positions. Additionally, we revisioned some positions in response to the learning needs of young people and the capacity needs of teachers at the elementary and middle school level to turn some current FTEs into instructional coach positions, and those positions serve students and teachers side by side, elbow to elbow, inside classrooms, which is one of the best forms of professional learning we could provide teachers. That all happened this year. And our continued commitment, it's next steps, next levels of social emotional learning. We plan to and did roll out the Wingman program at the middle school. Really, this is our next level work when it comes to SEL. Particularly with Wingman, it's a peer-to-peer SEL program where we help develop peer leaders in our middle schools to facilitate that social environment. And there's a real true power of empowerment. There's a sense of empowerment for our young people and the owning of their own social emotional learning, their mental health, their social circles. There's a lot of work done throughout the school year, and some large group come together over the summer. We also, we get feedback regularly on our communication, and we ask for the feedback from our stakeholders, and we get it unsolicited. And for the most part, we continue to develop how to respond to our stakeholders' need to consume information. And all through the pandemic and through even before, we have tried to diversify the way we communicate so that there's something for everybody. You'll see categorically here how we message differently, whether it's weekly updates on Friday that goes out to the full community, or little bits and pieces on social media. We've revamped our website. We've even put out a survey to our community, our school community. How do you want to receive information? So not only are we waiting for it to be given to us via email or people responding to us, but we went out and asked for the information. And we're trying to be responsive as we go along with our communication. You are recipients of regular daily COVID updates. We try to do that not just for COVID notification, but also, as you have just experienced the last couple weeks, as things change with COVID, we try to turn that information out immediately. So parents are hearing directly from us and not needing to rely on rumor or social media. We will continue to make changes and implement improvement in these areas. We can't talk about this year without talking about our response to COVID. Albeit many of us were hoping that we wouldn't have to talk about how we're dealing with COVID at this point, but know that a lot of our work still is consumed with responding and ensuring that, number one, we are keeping our young people and staff members safe, particularly most recently with the current spike. So we did return 100% in person on September 1st for all young people, and we came back January 3rd in person for everybody. Here's a list of things that we do on a regular basis that really connotes the sense of all hands on deck. Particularly this last week when we had to call upon everybody in our school system in the event of staff absences. Everyone really pitched in and made it work. I think these numbers really highlight the scope of the work that we have on the operations facility side. Please remember we have 1.1 million square feet of building space, 179 acres of grounds, and 485 classrooms. So when we're talking about clearing the snow in the morning and getting it ready and safe, it's not like just clearing your driveway or your front sidewalk. So these numerically represent the large scope of work that we have on 14 campuses. 15 if you count Parsons. Over the summer, we were able to complete 300 facility projects. We continued the mitigation requirements that we needed to implement for COVID. And of course, if COVID wasn't enough, we also had to deal with Hurricane Ida. And that took a couple of things offline at Harborside. So we had to, in the operations side, deal with that early on in the school year. As you recently heard, we transport 3,815 students every day with a number of bus runs, bus stops. We have a healthy relationship with Durham and appreciate their work for ensuring to get our young people to school every day. Of course, we have last year's Teacher of the Year, Para of the Year, Parent of the Year. Glad to say that we were all in school this year to be able to celebrate these great contributors to our work. And while that was just a quick snapshot over about 6 minutes, there are so many everyday moments to celebrate in Milford Public Schools that are not COVID related, that are teaching and learning related, that are social emotional related, that are staff and student relationship related, that is athletic related and extracurricular. There's so many opportunities to celebrate in Milford Public Schools. So moving forward, how do we continue to build on that? How do we continue to progress forward? We built some of those plans into this proposed 22-23 budget. The total of the 22-23 proposed budget is $102,008,319. That represents a 2.28% increase over last year's budget. So I really want to spend some time on this slide to talk about these 7 impact drivers. And the reason why I want to do that is because financially this year we were facing a very unique challenge. Typically, you know that you are facing contractual obligations, those increases in salaries. Typically, there are some increases that outside of contractual obligations that you know that you'll be facing. But the amount of these drivers really placed a heavy impact on our need to reprioritize and reorganize the plans we had, the plans we wanted to bring to the board. So let's take these one by one, and then we'll talk about the impact. So in the area of salaries, we are actually increasing net certified and non-certified FTEs by 11. There's an increase. 4 of those include the certified staff coming out of the ESSER grant. Another 4 are classroom teachers that we needed actually for this year. And I know this part can be a little confusing. But for the 21-22 budget, X amount of teachers were approved through the budget. But over the summer, as every summer, it occurs every summer, we had to add 4 classroom teachers, particularly at the elementary, to respond to enrollment increases. So those 4 add to the base of the budget that were not represented in 21-22, therefore automatically becoming an addition. There's also a position, a teacher leader position that comes out of the grant in the area of social emotional learning that comes into the general fund for 22-23. My executive summary, my letter to the board spells out exactly those positions that impact that. This item is about a little over a $700,000 driver. So right out of the gate, without any additional staffing, any dreaming in the FTE world, it's a little over $700,000 already that we're in the plus, okay? Driver number 2 is salaries in the non-FTE world, but related to COVID. We've spoken to you, I've shared with you information that we've had to hire many more building subs. In fact, substitutes have been very difficult to find and still are. So our strategy, as many other school districts, was to hire building substitutes where we could guarantee work every day. We would take them on our payroll so that we would ensure their accessibility. That's an additional cost. Another additional cost, as I've shared with you, we need many more cafeteria aides because we can't pile our children into the cafeteria due to social distancing. So we need many more adult bodies to monitor students during lunch. And with COVID, as it's happening, there's a trend of an increase in retirements. So while we do bake into a budget an average number of retirements every year, we're actually anticipating more retirements. And you'll see an increase in that line item, which we could, of course, discuss further in detail at our workshops. That number's what? Give me that number. So number 2 driver is almost $200,000 impact. Number 3, we had to go out to bid in the area of life insurance. So under the category of benefits, there is about a $65,000 increase just in the life insurance line item. And then for our health insurance for 65 and above, the Blue Cross Blue Shield, there was an increase there as well. and about $300,000 increase. We could talk about that more specifically during the workshop because you will remember some discussion about this line item last year as well. In the area of utilities, we are experiencing an increase in two areas, electricity and natural gas. Electricity because we're having to run our air ventilation systems much more so due to COVID. We're required to process fresh air ventilation. Where pre-COVID we would maybe close it down for the night or the weekends, there were some times during the COVID process, the last 23 months, that we actually were running the ventilation system nonstop. And you know what happens then, right? Electricity bill goes up. And natural gas, we talked about this during the assumptions. Natural gas prices have skyrocketed. So the utilities line was a significant driver for this budget. In the area of contracted maintenance, there are two software-based items that drove this up a bit, and that is our continued investment in Google. There are additional elements to Google that we invested in. So that line item in the Google Workplace increased. And then we have talked about Frontline and how we are weaving all of those employee systems together, and there was an increase in the Frontline item. There is the regular contractual increases in transportation. Transportation is always a big number. We are dealing with the contracted increases along with some of the regular rising costs of fuel. And then finally, the last driver is that KERMA no longer covers us for cyber security. And of all times to need cyber security, it seems like we need it even more so now. So we had to go out and find some cybersecurity insurance, and that is a line item we have not had the budget for that is built into this budget. So if you take these 7 drivers with no other dreams and plans for Milford Public School, no other progress or improvements made, what we had to deal with as an administrative team at the table immediately was this. An increase of $1.9 million to start. We were not really dealing with zero. So the 1.9 million actually represents, these 7 drivers represent 85% of the 2.28% increase we're asking for. So everything else that we're going to talk about as far as system improvements, potential purchase of equipment or furniture, represents 15% of the 2.28. I feel like this slide is apropos for any time that you talk about improvement planning. Improvement planning is not a straight line trajectory, right? Not much is in life in improvement. It's usually a couple steps forward, a couple of steps back. This woven line certainly demonstrates our need to go and reprioritize our work more so than ever due to pandemic. So while we never stopped on the hill, we did have to recenter ourselves and rethink about our pace up the hill and our cadence. So we took time this year to revisit, before and during the budget process, what are we doing with curriculum? What are we doing with technology? What are our priorities in facility and operations? We took time to revisit that and recalculate. So there were some items, if you remember my letter from 2 years ago, the on hold list. Well, I'm sure someone will ask the question, well, didn't you get some ARP money? Sure. ARP is to supplement our work. and to help fill in the gaps that may have existed, and is helping us accelerate some of the work because we've had to reprioritize. So I felt that this slide really gave us a visual on what we've had to do is really weave in and out of our plans and revisit and reprioritize, and know that we are still committed to the progress that we wanted to make in the Milford Public Schools. So let's talk about the big pieces we hope to move forward in the budget. And I did it by level and by system. I hope that with your approval and the town's approval of this budget, we will be able to expand the work of intentional play and executive functioning. Please note, this budget does not cover us going to every preschool and every kindergarten. It's too big of a bite. We're just adding more classes to the already started pilot. So we're hoping in this budget to be able to get intentional play and executive functioning into 8 preschools and 9 kindergarten classrooms. And you know we have many more than that. In fact, I think a couple of years ago, this board asked that we pilot some of the flex furniture in the younger years. So this is sort of that notion that we're just going to take small bites of this, knowing that our plan is to get to every preschool and every kindergarten room. We have some legislation, which I'll be providing you more information on in writing, that has been passed around the requirement of foundational skills for young people in pre-K 2. And it is primarily around the development of capacity of teachers so that our youngest learners, our youngest readers, have access to certain aspects of the science of reading. It may warrant an instructional highlight for this board one day, but we have not had that for you yet because we don't have enough guidance from the state. So the update to you will be, this is the requirement, and as soon as we get more guidance as to what that needs to look like, we'll provide that information to you. But know that we put in a placeholder for pre-K 2 literacy to respond to this new legislation in the science of reading. We also are going to go out on a limb, and I've been talking to this board and our team about Milford measures. That's what we call it, and you'll see it later in the chart here. But we are trying to revision what assessment looks like in classrooms. And we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We will still want to know if kids know their mathematical facts. We'll put that out into the universe. It's important for kids to know their multiplication tables in Milford. But there's much more to mathematics knowledge and skill than just that. And so next year, we are planning to invest in building a balanced assessment system, homemade, based on HQI, and based on new math curriculum that's already been developed, so that we can start to inform what does assessment look like in Milford, and how do we know when students know and can do. So we have a little bit of money baked into this that will actually yield a great result for us, and that is inform what can a balanced assessment look like for 485 classrooms. And I'm glad to share that we plan to continue to expand world language at the elementary. Right now we are K3. We are proposing that we add pre-K 4-year-olds and 4th grade. So we start to bookend that, and hopefully by 23-24 we'll be done with the expansion at the elementary, and by 24-25 we will have a proposal to you on revisiting all of world language now that we have kids going through elementary with empowered with another language. So that's the long-term plan. At the middle school, we know we have work to do in the newly formed schedule. I like to call it Middle School Schedule 2.0. We don't have much money baked into the budget for this, but know that this is a system improvement that Dr. Fedigan and team will be pulling together some information this winter to propose a 2.0 version of just lessons learned to make it even better. We're going to continue to expand the enrichment for all opportunity. Right now, there is an enrichment for all opportunity in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We're going to write more curriculum, develop more units of study, and have new offerings. It's some of the favorite courses that our kids are taking right now at the middle school based on their feedback. So we're going to continue to expand that. And then we also, based on newly developed 6 through 8 curriculum, are hoping to pilot some resources to find the best fit for the curriculum we've written. So we've budgeted for some money to purchase some resources that we're going to test out across the middle schools. I hope that you start to see a little bit of a pattern in our curriculum writing cycle, that we're writing curriculum, we're piloting resources, materials, assessments before full-blown system implementation. So you start to hear some of that language as we're presenting to you. And at the high school level, we want to invest in some upgraded furniture for the academy so that we can encourage more group work, moving away from the individual desks. Hopefully by next year, we won't be 6 feet, 3 feet apart. We are going to be, we're currently writing and will have available the legislative high school elective course in African American, Black, Puerto Rican, and Latinx studies. That is required for us to offer our high schoolers if they so choose. So it will be an elective available at all of our high schools next year. Investing in the foreign cardio equipment room. Cardio room will complete the high school projects. So it is completed at law. We've had this in the plans for a couple years if you've heard us talk about it, but we're finally hoping to move this forward to redesign the foreign cardio room. And the foreign drum line, I think Ms. Paris has brought this to my attention since she arrived in district 3 years ago. And so it's finally making the budget. It's time to replace the drum line for foreign. So it's just an expensive piece of equipment. So we just need to do it for our young people. District-wide, we are going to continue to invest in Milford measures. You'll hear more about that this spring. It is related to the legislated requirement for mastery-based diploma assessment. That is one piece of the big picture of Milford measures as I talked about the balance assessment. So you'll start to see these pieces come together this spring. But there is money planned for that. We do have some technology improvements, primarily in the area of upgrading servers. It's not the fun stuff to talk about. It's no cool robotics technology. But it's when a server goes down that everybody knows about it. So it is time to replace some servers. And then for curriculum improvements, based on the cycle that we have, writing, program review, and implementation, there are multiple pieces. I won't read them all to you, but there are multiple pieces in the hopper. And the same thing about riding up a hill on a bike, you got to keep moving, right? When you stop pedaling, it's even harder to get up the hill. We might get the question, I'm not saying it'll come from you, do you have to do all of this, Dr. Kutaya? The answer is yes. Yes. Because we're already scaled it down. We've already revised it. We've already gone back to the drawing board. We've already, and I hate to use this phrase, slowed it down a bit. And that's because of COVID, it's because of budget. And just inherently in the science of a cycle, you have to keep things moving in the cycle, right? So if you stop in the writing, now you've actually prevented it from going to program review and implementation, and you're falling further and further behind. So we've leaned on Dr. Fedigan and her team to revisit and to propose something that's very doable in the coming year. And these are the pieces that they propose through the budget to accomplish in the coming year. So when it comes to looking for areas of savings, we found a little over $500,000 in savings by cutting back in the areas of tuition, equipment, and some other educational support pieces. This is an average over the last 14-ish years of the increases represented by my predecessors and myself for the last few years and what the increases look like. Outside of a couple of blips, it's pretty much in the same area. on average increases. So as noted in my letter, every educational institution is like this. Most of our budget is people. A little over 77% of our budget is committed to salaries and benefits. We are a people-based business. We provide services through people. So when we start taking a look at almost 80% of our budget and the possibility of scaling back on the proposed budget before you, if you're not cutting people, then you're cutting the lines that we've talked about. Curriculum, professional learning, instructional supplies. Because you can't go to transportation because that number is baked in. You can't go to tuition because that number is based on kids. And if you don't touch the 80%, which is cutting FTEs, then you most certainly will be going to those other lines that are more related to teaching and learning. So know that the breakdown of salaries and benefits is about 77-ish%. This is a breakdown in increases by each object code, demonstrating the average of 2.28% across the object codes. And just to finalize, bring us back to anchoring us in the relationships framework, HQI, and the visional learner. That is, I hope you saw threads of that all throughout the presentation, and you will continue to see that in the line items that you review and will discuss at the workshops. Thank you, Ms. Glennon. Thank you, board members, for giving me time to explain the budget. Look forward to our dialogue and answering questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Kutaya. So just a reminder for the board again that the robust discussion will begin on Wednesday at 7 p.m. via Zoom. So I look forward to having some great conversation with all of you at that time.
Board, I think, right? Human Resources?
Yes.
Is that next? I think Mr. Riccitelli or someone's taking it, or?
Actually, I was not prepared to present the Human Resources report. Ms. Capazna is away this month. The report is in your package. If there's any questions that you have, I'm sure that I can make an attempt at answering them. And if not, we certainly can get you the answers in the weekly board update.
Do board members have any questions on the Human Resources report that we can try to get answers to? Mr. Riccitelli, if you could find out for us, maybe for the, and email us at some point, the number of retirements that we have to date.
Sure.
Thank you. We have quarterly budget report would be next then, Dr.
Hello.
Kutaya.
There it is. We'll take the quarterly budget report, Mr. Riccitelli. I think, Mr. Riccitelli, you're going to take the quarterly budget report?
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble hearing. Yes, thank you, Dr. Kutaya, Mrs. Glennon, members of the board. As is required by your policy governance, administration does come to you on a quarterly basis to give a summary of where we are in the budget at this particular point in time. Because this is the first meeting of a new board, I'll just very quickly go over some of the things that I usually say. And so although it's a quarterly budget report, I can assure you that we are constantly watching the budget. It's, not just even on a weekly basis. We're watching the budget on a daily basis, constantly monitoring and During the orientation workshops with Attorney Dugas, he mentioned to the board that the one area where you could be held personally liable is if you go over your budget. And I can assure you, I assure each board at the beginning of their term that as long as this administration is in place, we will not put you in jeopardy of being held liable. We watch the budget, we keep track of where we are. If need be, we put brakes on. Whatever we need to do to make sure that the dollars that are that the taxpayers have entrusted to you, and in turn you have put your trust in us to manage those properly, we certainly will do that. We give you that pledge. So in the quarterly report, we are at the halfway point. In the budget report, you will see either dollar amounts that are spent or encumbered. And for those who may not know what an encumbrance is, it's a dollar amount that is reserved specifically for a line item that we know or reasonably can predict that we will spend by the end of the year. So you'll see, just as an example, in the salaries accounts, you'll see that we have all of the money spent or all of the money encumbered that we predict that we will spend by the end of the year. So obviously we're only at the halfway point, so we've only paid salaries about 50% of the amount of money that's been allocated for salaries, but we've encumbered the entire amount because we anticipate by the end of the year, that's the dollar amount that we will spend. So where you see those percentages on the right-hand side, again, it's either spent or encumbered to this point in time. We can't really talk about the budget, and I'm going to go through some some specifics that are here. We certainly can't talk about it without accounting for COVID, and that's unfortunately has been our topic of discussion when it comes to the budget for way too long. I look forward to the day when we can just have a straight up budget without having to worry about COVID, but I guess not just yet, but we're getting there. Overall, I would say to you that we are in a stable condition. The uncertainties of COVID and the additional dollars that we're spending, in most cases, will be covered by various grants that we have, either the ESSER grant, ESSER 2, or the ARP ESSER, sometimes referred to as ESSER 3, but that's the American Rescue Plan monies that the board has. So I will go through some specific areas where you see negatives, and I can explain to you where we anticipate that money will come from by the end of the year in order for us to balance the budget. And but as I said, at this point in time, we're in a stable condition, watching certain accounts more closely than we usually do. And one of those right off the bat is the teacher salary account. You can see that we're still, I shouldn't say only, we've encumbered 99.72% of the teacher salary line, which of course is the biggest in the budget. That's much closer than it usually is at this point. And the reason for that is the additional 4 teachers that Dr. Kataya talked about that we needed. So that's why that's very close. Usually at this point in the year, that number's probably in a greater surplus than it is right now. But it's fine where it is. We've accounted for all of the teacher salaries that we have, and so we think that we will be fine there. Going back up one to the very first account, the certified administrator salaries, the deficit in that account, which we will be able to make up through surpluses in the other salary accounts, is we've hired 4 retired administrators to do part-time evaluation work. Because of the strain that's been put on the building administrators, we've made a decision, and we did last year also, to hire 4 retired administrators that help with some of the teacher evaluations that need to be done, because with the added COVID responsibilities, there just isn't the time for the building administrators to devote to good evaluations. And so that's why you see that line in a deficit there, but we will be able to make that up in other areas of the salary lines. Down to account 1117, teacher substitutes. Of course, that should not come as a surprise at all. We raised the amount of money that we're paying per diem substitutes. Dr. Kataya talked about the building substitutes that we've taken on this year. So we will have a deficit in that account, but the majority of that money will be recouped through either ESSER 2 or ARP. So we by the end of the year, we'll be fine in that account. Account 1123, hourly aides. That is where we are paying the isolation room monitors, which we're required to have in the schools. That too will be paid for through either ARP or ESSER. I'm going to continue to say either ARP or ESSER because in many cases, in just about all cases, the things that you can spend are almost identical in both of the grants. ARP has some more specific things, but the things that we're talking about here can be paid for either through ESSER or ARP. So it just depends on where we end up taking that money from. Overtime salaries. That's again directly due to COVID, and really can be pinpointed to the lunchrooms, the cafeteria issues that we have this year. We had hoped when the CDC and then the health departments backed off a little bit on saying that things had to be sanitized, because right now it's not a sanitizing all day long. It's just a routine cleaning process that needs to be done. So you would think that we'd be able to back off on some of that overtime that we needed additional custodians throughout the day. The problem is because we're eating in the classrooms, every desk still has to be cleaned every day. At the end of the day, there's more spills on the floor and things like that, which require additional manpower. At the high schools and the middle schools, we can't use the cafeterias the way we normally use cafeterias, so we're using gymnasiums, media centers, wherever we can find a spot, and we have desks in rows 6 feet apart, and that's where the students are eating lunch. That requires breaking down and setting up before lunch, after lunch, and then setting it up again for the next day. So, excuse me, I probably belabored it longer than I needed to, but the need for custodial overtime is still there. We're gonna look at it again and see how we can possibly back off on that, but that does continue. The good thing, if you if you can look at it as being a good thing, is that also can be paid for through ARP and ESSER. Excuse me, I'll account down to account 3304, architectural and engineering. You'll see there that that there's a deficit, and that is mainly due to we are planning, hoping for this summer to do the traffic improvement project at Orchard Hill School, and we're hoping that that is included in the city's bond authorization for this year. But in order to get to that point, we need to hire a traffic engineer to do the initial planning. So we've hired that engineering firm, traffic engineering firm, to do that initial study. And if it is approved for bond funding through the city, that money will be repaid in our budget from those funds that are approved by the city. Let's see. In the area on page 2, accounts 5101 through 5103, our special education transportation costs, you'll see deficits there, which are normal, and they can be offset with the state excess cost grant. So we're not concerned about those deficits at this time. And then moving down to the 5600 and 5601, the tuition accounts for special education, you'll see that at this point, there's only a small deficit, and I say small. Normally at this time of the year it would be much greater, but you'll recall that when we adopted this budget this year, we funded much of the costs that in previous years had been underfunded for special education. So we're doing fine in that account, and those accounts are reimbursable through the state's excess cost account. Backing up a few accounts to 5202, uninsured coverage, you'll see that there's over a $300,000 deficit there. That is due to Hurricane Ida and the damage that was done to Harborside and also the gym floor at Foreign. But both of those will be fully reimbursed by KERMA, our insurance company. So that deficit will be wiped out. I think that's it that I want to highlight. Accounts 7310 and 7340, equipment. Those are reimbursements that we will get through ARP and ESSER, and 7340 furniture and fixtures. That's all of the desks that we bought at the beginning of the year, so that the high schools and middle schools could have lunch in the cafeterias. in the gymnasiums and the media centers. So I think that's it at this point. I'll stop. Again, to tell you that the budget is stable. There's areas that we have to watch, but most of those areas will be covered by the grants that we have available to us. So at this point, so far, so good. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Riccitelli. I know you answered every question that I had written down. Board members, do we have anything that Mr. Riccitelli missed that you're wondering about? Mr. DeYoung.
Thank you. Sorry. Mr. Riccitelli, I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but were we working on replacing the furniture that had been put into the non-climate controlled trucks at the start of the pandemic, or have we not started that process yet?
I'm sorry. It's either my old ears that are not hearing well, or I'm getting feedback from that side.
Oh, I apologize. The furniture, the fixtures that we had to put in all those trucks at the start of the pandemic to make space in all the classrooms, have we started replacing those because they've gotten musty and moldy, or is that still on hold?
It's basically still on hold. At the beginning of this school year, we took what we needed out of the trailers, and we've replaced what we needed to replace. But for the most part, we haven't really put that much back into the classrooms yet. Things like the rugs for the elementary schools and things like that, we haven't put back yet because of the air quality issues that rugs represent. So there will be increased costs still in the future, but it really hasn't started in earnest yet.
Is that anticipated that will come out of the grant money, or is that out of the general fund?
it can come out of grant money, and if the board will recall, we also, your board also put aside money in the city's non-lapsing account, and there's funds there that we've pretty much been holding on to and earmarking for the kinds of expenses that you're talking about.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from board members on the quarterly report? All right, I see none.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the academic calendar. I'm just going to ask board members, please just give me.
Excuse me, Dr. Kataya told me that she needed to step out for a moment to address something, and she said to continue. She said to continue without her.
All right, thank you. We have the academic calendar for a second reading. Board members, the academic calendar with the few revisions that were necessary were included in the packet. Were there any additional questions from board members?
Wait,
Mr. Fowler?
No, I think we skipped over the disbursement report, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're correct. I'm sorry.
Sorry, thanks.
I was looking at dollars and cents. Disbursement report, Mr. Rich Telly.
Sure. Members of the board, in your package is a listing of all of the expenses for the district over the amount of $1,500 for the month of December. And those areas that are COVID related at your request are highlighted in yellow, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on the disbursements report.
Questions from board members on the disbursement report? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Rich Telly.
Thank you.
We're ready for the academic calendar, Dr. Kataya.
Okay. To bring your attention to the academic calendar, we did have a first read on this. We made a change at the bottom to reflect the language on the correct spring break, noting that if we had any additional excessive snow days, it would come off of the April 14th, backing up from the 10th. So this stands the same otherwise.
Thank you. Ms. Petrosky, do you have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves the 2022-2023 academic calendar as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Mr. Fowler seconds. We'll have a roll call vote so that we can hear what our remote board members will vote on this. Ms. Griffin, can we have a roll call, please?
Adam DeYoung,
No.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Andrew Fowler,
Yes.
Rita Hennessy,
Yes.
Emily McDonough Souza,
Yes.
Holly Mulrennan,
Yes.
Una Petrosky,
Yes.
Betsy Ratner,
Yes.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
and Susan Glennon.
Yes.
The motion passes 9-1.
My apology, I bystepped discussion. Did anybody have any comments they wanted to make on the calendar? Okay, thank you.
That's all we have for Superintendent's report, Ms. Glennon.
Thank you, Dr. Kutaya. We move on to consent agenda. Ms. Petrosky, do you have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves consent agenda item consideration of minutes of the December 13th, 2021 business meeting.
Is there a second?
I second.
Can we have a roll call vote, Ms. Griffin?
Adam DeYoung,
Yes.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Andrew Fowler,
Yes.
Rita Hennessy,
Yes.
Emily McDonough Souza,
Yes.
Holly Mulrennan,
Yes.
Una Petrowski,
Yes.
Betsy Ratner,
Yes.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
and Susan Glennon.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Ms. Griffin. We move on to board comment. Any members of the board wish to make any comments this evening? Mr. Fowler?
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. I just want to thank our teachers and staff for all the hard work that they've been doing the past several weeks. I know it's been hard, and prayers are with you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. Any other board members wish to make comment this evening? Ms. Doyle?
I would like to second Mr. Fowler's comment of the work of the board. I think this has demonstrated our budget and priorities of focusing on making sure the substitutes are in place, and the board and being able to accommodate over 200 absences during the week is quite a accommodation. You see it on the news multiple days of schools having to cancel, and it's a testament to your hard work, and we all appreciate it in the district.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. Any other board members wish to make comment this evening? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is
Motion to adjourn?
there a second?
I second.
Is there any objection to adjourning? Ms. Hennessy, Ms. Wolf-Boynton, you're good? All right, seeing none, we will adjourn at 8:31. I'll see everybody on Wednesday via Zoom at 7 p.m. Take good care.